Okay. Okay, YouTube is announcing to me that they're unable to save my video. Whatever the heck that means. Darren posted something on Discord about an animation challenge. And anybody who knows me knows that I don't normally get involved in that sort of thing. However, I'm feeling a little frisky today, and it occurred to me that doing an animation challenge in 24 frames per second could be a fun and kind of neat diversion and challenge. So with that in mind, what I did was, let's just turn this to rendered mode so you can see what's going on. So this is the, hey Darren, I'm just talking about this challenge you posted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to secretly reveal what I'm thinking I'm going to do. So if you guys want to cheat and kind of follow my approach a little bit, you can. And if you don't, obviously, A, you may not want to, and B, it could turn out that my idea sucks. Okay, but okay. So this is the challenge, and if you're wondering about the dog, that's actually I stuck the dog in there from another project I did last year that happened to be a 24 frame per second animation. So anyway, I thought I would go ahead and just reveal this is what I did. I thought, if you're going to do something as a challenge, the first step is to do the housekeeping. It's a really good idea to, there are sort of logistical and mathematical things you're going to want to have in place and done and complete and ready to go before you just start diving in and drawing. It can save you a lot of time. Now, a lot of times the way that you approach that can turn out to, the more you learn as you work your way through your project, you may find that you made some bad choices and you have to adjust accordingly. That's probably one aspect of something like this that does recommend Blender a lot, because it's pretty easy to have a workflow that's so procedural that with a little thought and care you can make changes upstream that propagate downstream. So for me, the danger for me is to do just what I said, which is dive in and just start drawing. That would be a really bad idea. So what I did was, number one, I put an empty in the scene, okay? And because I wanted to track the motion, right? So what I did was I put the empty in there and just tracked it like that. So you can see that I tracked that little edge right there. Why did I do that? Well, I figured whatever you're going to do with characters or, whatever fun ideas you come up with for this, you're going to want to probably animate the character kind of in place and have the traversing of the ground just happen. And besides, it's kind of one of the requirements of the challenge is that your character, I think, like if the character, you don't have to stick to their 18 frame per second footstep pattern, okay? But you do, I think the character does need to basically stay in place. So whatever's going to happen to make this interesting is basically going to consist of two things. A, you're going to change the character into something more interesting. Well, I guess three things. B would be changing the ground or the background. And then C would be anything you're going to introduce into the shot that, is unexpected or funny or whatever. So as I said, in this case, I took a animation I had already done and just threw it in there. So it would not be ridiculous, for example, if I had my character in this to have him jump over the dog. Okay. But the character can move around after the first frame. Yeah, I mean, I watched the video, you know, to review the rules, and I'm sure there's probably a lot of latitude. The main thing he said he was strong about is the first frame has to have the foot planted here, and the last frame has to have it has to be exactly what they did. You know, basically, it needs to end there. Why they did 126 frames instead of, I mean, if you had a straight, I mean, if you did a straight 5 seconds, that would be 120. So I'm not sure why they did 126, but probably because, actually, it's probably because of the 18 frame run sequence. So anyway, what I'm trying to do here now then is just basically for anybody who's interested, how do you sort of set up for something like this? So let me go ahead and take a little time and review that. The first thing I did was I knew I wanted to have the sample video in the shot, and so there's different ways you can do it. You can do it as a background. You can do it as a reference image. What I did was I decided to use images as planes, which is going to be, well, in previous versions of Blender, it would have been a mesh operation where images as planes was down here because it was originally a plugin someone wrote. So if you insert an image and you use mesh plane, that's effectively exactly what used to be add. What they call it? Image as plane, or you know, you could map an image or an image sequence to a plane. So anyway, that's the first thing I did. So this is an actual object or piece of geometry that's in the shot, and then I just lined it up perfectly to the camera. Well, actually, not perfectly, because as you can see, it's slightly larger. Okay, so that was the first thing I did. So now my reference is there. For our purposes now, it would probably be, I don't even know what represents the dog here. To tell you the gospel truth, you guys, the sad fact of the matter is that on my XP Pen Digital Artist 15.6 tablet, at this point, I pretty much need like some reading glasses or something, because this lettering is small enough that I can kind of read it, but it's a little fuzzy. And, well, you get the idea. So I guess to solve my little problem here, I'll go into object mode and grab this. Okay, and then what is this? I find this a little bit, everything with Blender that has to do with like collections and stuff, I've always found decidedly not intuitive. Probably if you get into really, really big complex projects, it's probably a win. But, okay, so when I click that, I grab this. When I click this, nothing in the, maybe I just need to extend, no. So nothing in the outliner shows that it's selected. Okay, so I guess it's that. Yes. Okay, cool. Finally, things are making sense. So I'm going to turn this off. If this was turned off, yeah. So you guys can have your own opinions about collections. I think it's probably a really useful organizing paradigm. It just doesn't really resonate with me. Okay, let's put it that way. I think the reason being that I tend to prefer a tree where the way I would understand it is that everything is organized like a tree. So you have collections of things that are owned by members of another collection that's owned by another collection. You have that sort of nesting thing. With collections, as defined by Blender, it's way more flexible than that. And so I actually haven't gotten into a deep and crazy enough shot in Blender anytime recently to have that make a difference. So anyway, bottom line is I just erased the dog so you guys don't have to look at it. The more important thing is this. So you guys can share if you think this was a smart idea or not. What I did was I went to every footstep and I added a circle empty that actually kind of encompassed his foot like that. And I won't get into recapping how I did it, but basically what I did was I added the first one, okay, and then I parented this to the empty, okay? So this empty is tracking the video, right? So starting here, which is basically that little corner right there, it follows along, okay? Just for the record, why my video is no longer playing, I have no idea. The only thing I changed was this. And so, frankly, I'm a little baffled because let me hit rewind and see what happens. So now my video doesn't play back. Just saying, guys, I'm working here in real time, and I'll reload it. I'll reload it and see if that makes a difference. I have no idea why that just took place. Night shh 9124. Hey, Night shh. You are new, so welcome to my live stream. Okay, so animation challenge. I'm not going to save the changes. Let me just load it up and see if, okay, everything works again. We'll call it a bug. So just for the record, I did set this up in Blender 5. Okay, so I'm thinking of things as I go along here. And this is kind of important, actually. If you look at this, so I mapped the, I didn't map it. All I did was moved the empty to this little corner right there, and then I just added a keyframe. So if we get out of the grease pencil into the regular dope sheet, you can see I added a keyframe. Then all I did was go forward a bit and add another keyframe so that it's now here. Now, this is the part where you want to pay attention because you might learn something. What I then did was I went into the, boy, it is actually frightening. The graph editor, it's frightening how hard this is to look at. And what I did was I took the X and the Y animation, geez, what do you even call these? It's like my Blender terminology. I've been using Blender since 1999, for God's sake, and I can't remember the terminology. It's pretty sad. Let me zoom out here and see. Okay, so this is selected. Okay, and so what I did was I got to zoom way in here so you guys can see. Otherwise, it's like, what the heck's going on? I believe I set a keyframe here. Oh, there. Okay. Keyframe at the beginning, and then keyframe here. What I did was 2 steps. Number one, I grabbed the curves, and man, I apologize, guys. It's making me want to claw out my own eyeballs right now. Why can't I grab the curves? Empty action. This is really weird. I mean, I gotta just take a breath here. It's really weird. I mean, Blender 5's been pretty awesome so far, but I think that the combination of the screen is just a little bit, it's like just fuzzy enough that I can't quite see what I'm doing. Let me just do this. I hate to do this, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna switch screens, and oh man. I'm just gonna switch screens so I can see what I'm doing. And in the empty action, so forgive me, guys. That's Blender 2.93 you're looking at the moment. Okay, I've got the answer. Okay, guys, here's the answer. And again, I apologize. It's like, how can I possibly get online here and be this incompetent? Well, I am. Okay, the answer is you cannot click the curve. You cannot click the curve. You have to click one of the keyframes on the curve. Okay, I probably knew that from ancient times, but I had forgotten. So I did 2 steps. The first thing I did was I changed the interpolation on the curve to linear. And you can see that over here. The default would be Bezier, which is going to give it handles so you can do easing with a curve or whatever. So I changed all of these to linear, specifically so that there was no easing at all. I wanted it to just follow the video perfectly. The second thing I did, and this is probably more important, is extrapolation mode, which would be channel. Extrapolation mode would be linear extrapolation. Let me see what happens when we change that to that. Yeah. Okay. If you normally this is what the curve would look like. You'd have Bezier handles obviously by default, but basically you'd have a key here, a different level here, and then it would flatten back out. So when you change the extrapolation to linear, it just takes whatever the angle is of extrapolation, or, you know, to get from this key to this key, and then it just extends it forever. So what that meant in practice was that as long as this goes, you can see the empty just keeps traveling in the correct direction. So, okay, that was step 2. Step 3 was, on each of these footfalls, I added a tiny little empty, and then I parented, well, let's just say I added the first one, okay? So I made it so it was sized just about the size of the foot. I didn't know if that was going to be useful later, but I thought, what the heck, I'll be as exact as possible. Then what I did was I just set a keyframe on this and then shift click, shift click. Hey, Blender, you know what? I love you, man. Could you just like maybe respond to the hotkeys here for a half second? There he did. Okay, so shift click and then control P to parent this to this. And all that did was it means that when the main empty that I did the motion tracking and the extrapolation on, when it moves, this keeps moving too. And then all I did was I kept duplicating this empty, moving. I turned auto keying off, by the way. So I took a duplicate of this empty, and then at every footfall, I just moved it in place and set a new keyframe. So what you have is you get a bunch of little circles that are all parented to that, so that throughout the whole shot, I know where the footsteps are supposed to fall. Now, obviously, like I said, you got some latitude here, and if you don't want to follow their footsteps exactly, apparently you don't really have to. Here, just, I mean, I don't know if I should mention this. This is probably a controversial statement, but just to be clear and accurate, their sample video, that right there is wrong. Sorry, guys that issued the challenge, but that's really wrong. If that's where the footstep falls, then why the hell is the foot sliding? Okay, we'll just go with it, though. That's okay. I don't mean to be. I mean, obviously, it's a cool thing they're doing, and frankly, the ability to, you know, win a Huion tablet is kind of cool. So no big deal. Let's grab this again. And probably we want to switch this back to the dope sheet. Boom. I need to learn the hotkeys is what I need to do, so that I basically don't have to depend on being able to see what I'm doing. Okay, so we'll jump over to Blender 293 in a second, where I'll kind of play along with a couple of the things I'm thinking about doing. But basically, here's, as far as the scene, remember, there's basically 3 things you can do. You can change the character and how they move within limits. You can change the ground and the sky, and you can introduce new stuff that interacts with the character in some way. So to me, when I was thinking about it, well, what was attractive to me is the idea of an old school animation. It was kind of inspired by, like in Roger Rabbit, when Detective Valiant drives into Toontown. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. So if you're wondering what I'm talking about, I'll get to that in just a minute. So here in the foreground, I just sketched this in real quick. I thought, okay, so it'd be interesting if there's always this road in front of him that's curving around. Okay. Why is that an interesting idea? Well, it's an interesting idea because what you could do is, let's actually just go to the, let's go to the top view. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another empty right here. And, oh, for the old days of Blender when you actually could just click somewhere and the cursor followed you. Now you have to switch to cursor mode. And I understand it. It's basically because for the last 10 years in Blender, it's become more popular to grab things with the left mouse button. So there it is. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another empty. I tend to favor the plane axis kind of thing. And for our purposes, I'm going to show you how what I'm about to do is kind of procedural, as I said earlier. The idea, let me just pull out here. The idea is that you've got these mountains in the background. And so the mountains would have to follow in the background as the guy's running, and they would have, excuse me, I'm belching all over my audience. And of course, they're going to move more slowly than, than he appears to be running because they're way, way, way off in the distance. How would you do that? So I'm going to just do that right here in real time. And by the way, I am going to save my work. Okay, the way I would do that is like this. I'm not going to turn on auto keying because Blender's going to want to add keyframes on every possible channel, and I don't want that. What I want to do is add a rotation. Whoops. Hit the I key. Really, Blender? Wait a second. Okay. Why is it... trying to keep my cool here, guys, and not get angry. What is the one thing that probably makes me angrier than anything else when I'm live streaming? It would be when I'm doing something with a tool, in this case Blender, where what actually has worked literally in exactly the same way with no exceptions for 30 years, all of a sudden today doesn't work. That makes me really, really mad. Okay? Everywhere in Blender, if you mouse over something and you hit the I key, it sets a keyframe. Normally with something that moves, if you hit I to hit a keyframe, a dialogue would pop up, right? A dialogue that says, well, what do you want to set the keyframe on? Like what parameter, what, in this case it would be rotation. Why does that not happen anymore all of a sudden and only on this one object? Very, 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 very freaking strange. Maybe I need to hit insert. No. That would be Krita. Okay, so Darren, you're out there. You got a clue here? I'm in Blender 5, and I'm telling you that absolutely, literally, no hyperbole here, for the first time in 30 years, I've never seen this happen, where in Blender you hit the I key and you get no opportunity to add a keyframe. What? That's not even possible. Okay, so I'm going to do the ridiculous thing and move this into the larger screen for just a moment and just look at something here. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to save my work and reload it again. If this happens more than a couple times and what we find is that things operate as expected, then... which they're not. So, okay, so apparently something's changed in Blender. I don't know if this is a Blender 5 thing. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, just so you guys don't think I'm absolutely insane. Let's go into object mode, and let's add a mesh, and we're just going to add a box or a sphere or something, right? Okay, if I hit the I key, see what's on the screen? That has been on the screen in Blender for 30 years. You hit the I key, a menu pops up to choose what it is you want to set a keyframe for. This is actually, by the way, one of the reasons why I was thinking I was probably going to do the animation on this thing in Blender, in Blender 2.93, just because I've been loving Blender 5 for video editing, but as far as animation and all that, modeling and all the rest, I just haven't dove in and played with it yet. So we're running into stuff in real time. And so if anybody out there happens to be a Blender person, What am I missing? Because I have never seen this. Never. Not one time ever have I seen any such thing as a version of Blender where hitting the I key does not give you the ability to add a keyframe. How do you animate? It's crazy, man. Okay, so we're in object mode, and I am not going to try to figure this out right now. So what I'll do, let's just go ahead and see if we can auto key. So I'm going to go to the top view and just move this a little bit like that. Okay, and then I'm going to go a few frames forward. It doesn't matter how many. I'll show you why in a minute. And I'm just going to hit this again. Okay, now we're going to see if it animates. And it does. You see that's animating. Okay, that's good. Okay, so yes, it's a little offensive, but we can work with it. So now we're just going to go straight to the graph editor, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to, this is obviously the parameter that matters. It set keyframes because I used auto key. It set keyframes for everything else. I didn't want that, but that's okay. That's what we have to live with because for some reason, I can't even believe I hear myself saying this. For some reason, Blender 5 does not give me a keyframing menu when I hit the I key. Wow. I don't even know what to say. Okay, so what do? Well, we do the same thing we did before. Let's change each of these to linear so that this is nice and clean. It's not that Bezier isn't great, because it is if you want to do any kind of easing, right? And have way more control over your animation. But for something that's supposed to turn at a completely steady pace throughout the whole animation, it's better to use linear interpolation. And then the other thing obviously would be you go to channel, extrapolation mode, linear. Same thing as before. And what that does is it means that this is going to slowly turn. Now, why is that a powerful thing, and why do I call it procedural? Well, because if I want to speed up this spin, all I have to do is just make this steeper. Right? If I put it like this, faster and faster and faster, and if we get really crazy, it'll just spin forever. Okay, so how is that useful? I'm not going to actually do it right now because I want to get into the character and the animation stuff, but basically the reason that's useful is now I can take a graphic of the mountains and just parent it to this object so that as the guy's running along, the mountains will just slowly pan across in the background. And I can even add two curves or two empties, whatever, so that I can have some parallax, right? So as far as housekeeping goes, that pretty much does it for the shot, I think, because now it's just parenting and sort of fudging things around to make them look right. So this should go back to being a dope sheet, I would say. And now we need to think about the animation stuff. So I'm not going to actually animate yet. What I'm going to do is jump over to 293 and just play around with some of the things I was thinking about doing. Like, for example, let's see here. I have the wrong stylus. Bear with me for 2 seconds while I switch. Okay, here we go. Had the stylus from my Wacom tablet. Okay, so what am I talking about? Well, it's talking about stuff like this. Okay, let's put the strength at full so I can see what I'm doing better. This is kind of what I'm feeling on this thing. I want to see this type of stuff. Something of this nature. Very old school. One idea I had was to have this be like a, you get the idea, something like this. And just you could have all kinds of fun with really old school things like, you know, she notices him and all of a sudden a bunch of hearts come out. I almost hate to I'll give away my concept here. Right. And so you could probably, you know what, there's actually a shot in Roger Rabbit where Valiant is looking into a room and he can see a silhouette of Jessica Rabbit. And then when he busts in, it turns out that it's not Jessica. It's another tune that has basically Jessica's body, but the face is much more akin to this. Something like that. Like rubber hose style, you know? Like I don't like that. Let me do that again. I think we have to actually cut this across here. So let's just hit the control key and boom. Hey, Snow Fix Art, what's going on? All right, so this is just my concept. Like I said, the thing that's interesting about it is it's so different than what I do on my show. And plus it's 24 frame per second animation. So I'm just seeing this character where, you know, just totally exaggerated. And I'm going to go tab, shrink that down a little bit. All right, back into draw mode. And by the way, if anybody has any questions or anything, you know, let me know. My information on Blender 5 is not going to be the greatest ever. Thanks, Snow Fix Art. Just for the record, Snow Fix Art, are you somebody new here, or are you? I've had it happen where a couple guys like Ross and can't remember who else, but showed up and you know, I really thought I was interacting with someone new when it was just them under a different account. Right? So she would want to have the boots with the curvy, you know, sort of the little buckles or whatever, maybe. Just I want it to be old school. And so that's one example of what I'm talking about. Another great example that you see all over the place. I tell you what, not only in Roger Rabbit in Toontown, because that was a pastiche of Disney stuff and Warner Brothers, but the one I'm thinking of in particular was more Disney. Because if you go back and look at, I think it's Fancy Free. It's a Disney. It's like a 1 hour long Disney cartoon, and the story of Bongo the Bear is one of the stories in there. So anyway, this is what I'm talking about, the trees. I'm thinking I want to feel like when that empty that I showed you, when this empty spins around, the mountains are going to be going by kind of slowish, but the trees would be going by a little faster. But they'd still be in the background. And by putting them in the background and using the parallax, this is a really interesting thing you have to think about with a project like this. You only have 5 seconds, right? So if you're really creative and you have a lot of really cool ideas, you're going to run into, it's going to be challenging. And I'm not speaking as an authority here because I'm looking at this project as, I don't know what I'm going to run into, but it's going to be a challenge. So what I'm thinking is you don't have time for 15 gags because at 24 frames per second, it all goes by too fast. It just goes by too fast. So I'm going to go ahead and sculpt this a bit because I'm probably being a little sloppy because I'm yakking. But okay, so in the style I'm talking about, typically what you see is you're going to see like the leaves are treated as hair. You're probably going to have, geez, I don't actually think I want to put whites of the eyes. I'm kind of feeling like I want to do this kind of thing, like really old school, like 1930s. You know, the rubber hose animation. You could go ahead and give these guys the, you know, something like that. You guys know what I mean. It's like right? And so then the trees would have probably rubber hose type arms kind of thing. And then you're thinking, as far as animation goes, you're thinking about the silhouette. So like you want the hands out wide so that if this was all black, you could still tell what's going on, right? So as an animator, you kind of want to think about that. And then the other aspect would be, in this case, let me do one thing here. Let me go back one keyframe here. I probably should have put it on a different layer than the girl. Let's do that. In case anybody here doesn't know how to do that, here's how you do it. Grab all this and just hit the M key and move it to a different layer. So I'll just move it to the lines layer. Okay. And so that way in the sketch layer, when I go into edit mode, hold on. Okay. Edit mode, I said, and I hit the A key, you see. She can't get selected now. Okay, so why did I do that? Well, here's what I want to do. Think of it like this. Think of the tree as being that. Like if you were you're gonna say, here's the tree, and then we want the tree to be like that. We want it to bend. Okay? And the reason is because basically I want it to dance. So I'm gonna grab all of this and I'm just looking if now the insert keyframe dialog comes up. What is it? Control I? Yes, Control I. Okay, so Control I inverts the selection. So I'm going to do, this is going to be a little bit of a different approach. What I'm going to do is click this little guy right here, which makes it so the sculpting only applies to the actual selection. Okay. So obviously the selection's not perfect, but I'm going to leave that like that. And then I'm going to go back into edit mode. And I'm going to hit Control I to invert the selection. And in this case, I probably could just do it like this. I hate the way, I need to change the default. Usually median point is what I want. Okay, we'll sneak that down like that. And then what we'll do is we'll kind of grab this region right here. And what the heck? Let's try rotate. Little clue on rotate with the grease pencil sculpting is plus. Think of it this way. If you're going to rotate a bunch of stuff, is it supposed to be plus or minus? Well, the answer is just look at your hands. Plus means left, and minus means right. All right, so I'm going to make this a little bigger. You get what I'm trying to do. I actually don't like the way that's affecting it, so I'm going to go back into grab mode and just do this that way. Okay, so did I just screw up? I did. Sorry, guys, I screwed up. I got to do all this over. Yep, undo a million times. Okay, why? I didn't go forward to another keyframe, which was pretty dumb. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate this and squunch it down. And then in edit mode, I said Control I lets me invert the selection. There we go. And that's not what I meant to do. I'm just going to delete those. No, I'm not. I'm going to go back 2 steps, hit undo. I have a tendency to hit the E key to sculpt when I'm in edit mode, but in edit mode, the E hotkey does not take you to sculpt mode. What it does is it extrudes. So you actually have to hit DE. Chizyapo, I see your question, and I'll answer it here in a minute. Okay, so what I said, and you guys can kind of you guys can talk to Darren about this too. So Darren posted on Discord an animation challenge, and as I said at the start here, I don't usually get involved in that kind of stuff. You know, it's like I'm kind of busy doing my show. But I just thought it would be a good exercise because it is supposed to be 24 frames per second. And when I looked at the challenge, it looked like something interesting to do. So you can go back to the beginning of the video to get the bigger picture. But basically in Blender 5, I brought in the sample video you're supposed to start with on the challenge. And then I did a bunch of housekeeping with empties and stuff to keep the scene organized. And basically the question becomes, creatively, what do you want to do with this? You want to change the guy into a different character? Do you want to change the ground and the background? Do you want to do like I did with the dog here, where you introduce other characters with some sort of interaction maybe? Yada, yada, yada. So the housekeeping and the setup for what I'm doing is in place. So now I'm just playing around with character concepts. Okay, so let's pop this up to 24 just to keep it fair. Boom. Okay, so in other words, Darren, if you're here, actually I was going to ask about this, and maybe you know. On this challenge, what's the story on soundtrack? Like, is it supposed to be silent, or can you do a soundtracky kind of thing? Okay, so sound effects, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm in draw mode. I'm going to approach this a little different way. Guys, here's what I'm going to do. Because this didn't, with the sculpting and the bending and stuff, it didn't do quite what I wanted. So I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm going to select basically, I'm going to select pretty close to this region right here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the cursor right there, okay? And I'm going to turn on proportional editing, but now the proportional editing should rotate around the cursor. Wait, no, it doesn't. What do I need? I need to hit this and switch this to cursor. There we go. And when you do this, you can sort of expand or contract the area of influence. So what I was trying to do was something more like that. So let's just see. Yeah, something more like that. Just like a dancing kind of thing. And so anyway, like I said, little kooky, old school type characters. And I'm going to save this as, we'll call it character ideas. Okay. Blender 2.93. Okay, so now I'm going to look at the... Yeah, okay. All right, you're not going to get disqualified if you add some sound. Okay, so 1156. Quick check on the market. Everything looks pretty good. It's a little bit of a tepid day today compared to the last 2 days, but let's just play around here now since we're here and having fun. I'm going to play around with some of the other, I guess I need to go to my layers. Let's just add a new layer. Doesn't matter what we call it. I'm just sketching anyway. All right, let's go back to frame 1 and just play around with some of these ideas I was thinking about as far as the characterization goes. So I'm just doodling because I just want to get the feel for the kind of thing I'm talking about. This does not necessarily... Oh, I know. Let me see. What did I do here? I guess that's pretty much... I mean, this is the one idea that I think I definitely want to do, is introduce this... Probably, it's kind of This is not politically correct animation. You know, the stuff they were doing. It's like when you watch Roger Rabbit, you know, they had these Valiant fires a gun and the bullets that come out are animated character bullets, and they're like Native American, and let's just say it's extremely stereotypical. So she would be more like wrapping her hands together like that. I think she should have gloves. Normally the gloves are going to be, oh, you might have lines on them, but something like this, and then rubber hose pretty much on the fingers. That would be, I think, what I'm wanting to do. We could have, as the background is going by, we could have a, this is just me practicing this sort of style. This is, we could have a cow grazing. That looks like a dog that's been turned into a devil. That doesn't look like a cow. Better. These horns don't look right to me. So what about the character? All right, you guys, what do you think? What should we do with this guy? Like, as far as the character himself. The probably most obvious thing, if I'm going with this old school deal, would be, you know, something in that style. One thing I noticed, let me look at my paper here. I did some sketches. I guess I should probably finish my cow. That's better. Put a bell around old Bessie, right? What else? Oh yeah, obviously we should have a sun. Something like that up in the sky. Let's go forward one key. Give myself a little more drawing space. Probably technically I don't need the onion skins on. Okay, so yeah, another idea that I thought of, I don't even think I saw this in any of the references I looked at, but it just kind of made me, oh yeah, I did actually. Maybe it was in that Bongo cartoon. There was sort of a Cupid type character. Something of this nature. And I guess I would want a Cupid-ish character to have a little more curly hair, I think. Right? And so now, of course, if you're going to have Cupid, you got to show their butt. Otherwise, it's not. Hey, Amar. Yeah, I'm actually. I completely reproduced the initial edit on. That's number 2. Where's the edit? I swear, I can't see. I cannot see. All software is made for people with really young eyes. It just is. So bear with me here, friends. Oh, Anime. Decom 4 scenes. Oh, by the way, Darren, I hate to tell you this, man. Okay, so just for Amar's enrichment, I did take the edit of Chronicles of Mel episode 4, what I have of it so far, and I moved the edit from Vegas to Blender. And I got to tell you, I'm pretty impressed. I mean, we're maintaining our frame rate. The color correction tools are absolutely excellent. And I like what I'm seeing. So I'm not ready to jump to Blender 5 for like, you know, animation for grease pencil and all that, because I'm just main thing is that I spent like an hour 2-3 days ago going through and making sure that I had complete parity with Blender 2.81, 2.93, and 5 across all machines. So I've got 2 Linux laptops, one that's kind of it's mainly for writing. It's pretty underpowered, so I use Blender 2.81 on that one. But the excuse me, the portability thing is important to me. Maybe more important than it needs to be, but it is important to me. And so I did achieve parity. All the hotkeys are the same. The screen layouts are the same. I was going to live stream about this or post a video or something, and there were enough gotchas in the process that I became a little disenchanted. What am I trying to say? Well, I was playing with Tahoma 2D. And the more I thought about it, just mentally, I'm thinking, I can see some ways that, I may have mentioned this in my last live stream actually, that Tahoma is going to become more a part of my workflow. So now the following comes strictly from the perspective of somebody who's done a full half-hour cartoon, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of scenes, where the level of organization and file management and stuff is at a level that you just don't have to care about for a project like this. A project like this, I can throw it all in one folder, and you know, it could get large and it could get somewhat complex, but not anything like a show that's, you know, many, many, many minutes long. So why do I say all that? Well, the basic prevailing paradigm in Tahoma 2D is to reference things. Now, I know, of course, if you drag in some images from outside or whatever, it'll import them. I know all that, okay? That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is when you set up, you do things like set up a new project, and the file management and the referencing, let's just say that in my humble opinion, the file management, especially when you're starting a new project, but have a fairly custom way of working, I guess in order to not belabor it, let's just make it short. If a program disappoints me repeatedly in the area of just file management, where I'm having to spend a lot of time moving things around and babysitting the software, then that becomes a non-starter for me, where it's like, I don't even care how good the software is. It can be amazing, but if it can't freaking count, and that's what most, you know, programming boils down to, is you put things in collections and you count them and you keep really good track, because in an event-driven climate, you don't know what's going to invoke calling certain functions. And I know that probably sounds like a bunch of blah blah to a lot of you. The bottom line is, what I'm saying is, Krita is better because Krita basically bakes everything into the Krita file. So at least you're safe in that way. Blender, more or less the same thing. But with Tahoma, the basic paradigm is that everything is referenced from the Tahoma file. And that can be, it's fine until it's not. I don't know how else to say it. It's fine until it's not. And so my experience the other day with Tahoma 2D, I was really looking forward to a good session and getting some stuff done. and was really disappointed to find that I bumped into just stupid stuff that meant all my time here working with the tool is spent compensating for the weaknesses in the tool. Now, that's not a proclamation. I mean, I'll be going back to it probably in the next few days and see what, look at the things I was kind of struggling with. And I guess it was disappointing because I was kind of surprised to discover that Tahoma 2D had for version 1.5, had a Linux app image that really worked, and it was really portable too. I was impressed. But then I sat down on my Windows machine and actually tried to get some work done, and it was like clunk after clunk after clunk. So I know it probably sounds like nonsensical because you don't really have any specific reference of what I'm talking about. Okay, so something like this would be okay if you're going to have a Cupid, then obviously having a butt showing is absolutely mandatory. And of course, you're going to have an arrow and maybe a bow floating around. So just things like that. Now, actually, I want to draw this lamb too. This was something I noticed in, let me see what Amar's talking about. Looking over the rigging updates. See, you know what? Finding your creative, if you're going to do something that's a long-term or large project, for sure, rigging up a 3D model is not a bad way to go. In fact, actually, just today, I've kind of found the line art modifier kind of baffling, and I figured it out today. Why? It's probably got something to do with the materials, but it turns out using my standard grease pencil object didn't work. But when I created a brand new grease pencil object with nothing in it, and then added the line art modifier and applied it to I just applied it to like some metaball objects and a Suzanne model and stuff, and it worked. I'm like, okay, that was easy. And of course, you can do freestyle as well, and you can actually use the oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. It's a modeling modifier that effectively extrudes the, darn it, I wish I could remember what it's called, but I don't want to get too sidetracked. But there's basically 3 or 4 different ways in Blender to take a 3D model and turn it into a 2D look, right? So, what was I drawing here? Oh yeah, the lamb. That's wrong. I am so silly. So this would actually be a tiny little petite nose. Something of this nature. I think there was somewhere in something I looked at that had a character like this. The thing that jumped out at me about this little sheep, which I think this is more significant than you would probably think at first glance, is that the animators figured out that if the foreleg of the sheep looks like it's covered in wool, it very much sells the idea that this is a lamb. Now, in this case, of course, this is totally wrong because the snout's way too big. Okay, so you say, well, how are you going to figure that out? This is what I would do. Just start erasing. Start erasing, and this is, now we're getting into workflow here. Think about, as you're just sketching, how does it feel? Does it feel like a sheep? Like, to me, God, I almost want to start over completely because I'm waiting for the feeling of the character of a lamb to jump out at me, and I'm not feeling it yet. Something about the eyes is not working. Let's zoom in and play with this a bit. So none of this applies directly to the animation challenge. This is just me drawing and just thinking about what I'm drawing and how it feels. Let's do the big pupil thing. maybe a little bit. I'm not sure. Something about the snout. There's, for some reason, it's just not selling, and I'm not sure. Finding or create a solid 2D and 3D model fully rigged for both instances. For both instances. What do you mean for both instances? Along taking my review of my past animation. I'm glad you're looking back in the archives and pulling stuff out and thinking about what you might want to finish. You know, because you may look at it and either want to completely redo or discard, you know, quite a lot. That's kind of what I was saying on the Discord. There's no right answer there. You know, nobody here should be ashamed because they started something and didn't finish it. I mean, my God, in the animation space, very little that gets started ever gets finished, if the truth be known. So if you found that you either painted yourself into a corner in some way and it just wasn't happening, then fine, let it go. And it would be good to take inventory of what you did, in fact, learn from the experience. That's definitely useful. So this seems a little more puppyish than lambish to me, but that's okay. But I thought it was interesting the way the... Okay, I do not want proportional editing on. That the animators, this does not work. I'm going to delete this completely. But the fact that they figured out that the way to sell that it's a sheep was to have the, you know, the forelegs be thicker and wider, like they're covered in wool or something, I thought was pretty clever, actually. Okay, let me look at what Amar's got going on. I have access based on what I've been seeing. I should be able to complete a project without being bound to having the best animation. Nobody has the best animation. Nobody. You know, I'm going to dovetail on that for a moment. It's really important to notice something. Like, for me, the sort of intertwining of the craft of doing it versus... I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't really watch cartoons very much. I don't watch cartoons or movies. I'm like the filmmaker that doesn't watch movies. It's crazy, but it's true. And, you know, to each his own. There we go. Okay, it needs to be a more, maybe button eyes. My whole purpose when I address these issues is to encourage people to try to enjoy the journey, whatever that means. You know, people tend to enjoy the social journey. And I think the big reason for that is because it's pretty low cost, at least in the short run. And the journey of this type of work is a much harder and longer journey. You know, where everything you do basically is not quite as good as you wish it was. And that's just the way it is, man. There's nothing that ever is going to change that. Oops, we got to turn that off. And you're still learning, you know? Whoopsie, I need to go. Buh. You know, I just had a conversation with my film distributor yesterday. And it was quite useful. Let me see what happens if we put that. Maybe. What we kind of arrived at. This was, I can kind of recap because it's relevant to you guys as creators. In a sense. First of all, one question I brought up in the live stream not too long ago was, and I asked Dave this directly. I didn't really pull any punches, and it wasn't confrontational or anything, but because we're good friends and stuff. But you know, I'm like, dude, from the standpoint of a creator, if I'm looking at these self-serve platforms that maybe take 20% royalty on a product. Okay, so we're not talking about YouTube right now. We're talking about you create a finished show of some kind and you're trying to get it on, Amazon Prime and all the likely suspects as far as where you might want your show to be able to be found so that people maybe watch it and think it's good. Okay? And it turns out they did the math. They actually did some investigation because there's a platform. I don't have it in front of me, so I don't remember the name of it, but it's a compelling platform where it's kind of like, I think it's called Runway is the one where you can, they take a 20% and they'll get your product on all the major platforms as much as they can anyway, So it's just a better split as far as the amount you're giving up to a distributor. So anyway, we talked about it, and when he told me they looked into it, they actually put a title on this platform that I can't remember the name of because they had a unique thing going on whereby what they were doing was they not only published your earnings for that month, but think about this, guys. Think about this for a minute. This is actually a big deal. They not only send you, a report of everything you've earned that month, but they give everybody that's on the platform, all the creators, get a report of what everything on the platform is doing. Now just stop and digest that for a minute. Think about the level of transparency where everybody that is on this particular platform has the ability to see what is trending on the platform and adjust accordingly if they want to. Adjust accordingly meaning if my content's not really grabbing, but this other content over here is grabbing, maybe I want to create something more like that. Now you could say, you could complain about it like, oh, well, that's not very original, but you know what? The realities of the marketplace is you got to do what you got to do. I mean, every show that's ever been created has been a compromise, between the unique artistic vision of one person versus, what's trending in the marketplace. And it's just a fact of the media space that we always want to create more of what's succeeding. So I thought the transparency thing, I think that's a pretty neat idea, And then my contention, which I throw this out there because you guys can have an opinion if you want. My contention in talking to my distributor was this. I said, everybody in the creative space has the same problem that everybody in the economy in general has right now. Like we are all looking around and we're going, there's a lot of uncertainty right now, and it's a time where we're taking inventory, who our friends are. Like if the economy like totally crashes or whatever, like who can I depend on, or what are my skills that are useful even if like the dollar goes into hyperinflation or something. I'm not saying I'm predicting that happening. I'm saying that when you prepare, that's the kind of thing you're preparing for. What actually happens in practice is usually a much more muted version of these horrible, of the 1929 crash, right? However, it is a fact of history that right now we are way overdue for another one of those. We just are. And so, So my contention in talking to my distributor is I said, I think that you need to not only think about marketing from the standpoint of, let me finish the point I made earlier. On this self-service platform, what they figured out, what they discovered was that if you're on that platform, you're going to make about 30% more on the split. However, your actual penetration in the market is going to be about half of what you would get with this distributor. Now, that may not apply for every title, but the bottom line is that, like for me with my show, going self-service probably is not much of a win. Now, if I've got a really good marketing thing going on, then it could be, right? Because, it's the same reality you have in the music space right now. If you want to succeed, it's really 100 trillion, thousand, million, zillion % up to you and you alone. You have to promote. You have to build a following, blah, 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 blah. It isn't enough to just create something cool. Even though every year, of course, there are things that are created that are so cool they really grab. It does happen. It's just that you can't, probably most people can't really build a business model that way because you can't count on it, right? So instead what you do is you compromise. You look at what the market's kind of looking for and see if that's something that floats your boat or you think you could do, and then you rock and roll and see what happens. It's all quite risky. So the overall climate of the media space right now is that it's muted for everybody. Like, it's not a boom period right now. Just that's kind of the sumupance of the business side of it. So my contention was, you need to think about marketing, not just from the standpoint of marketing the titles in your catalog, but you need to think about marketing from the standpoint of supporting your creators. Find a handful of creators, probably somewhere between 0 and a dozen, that you really can work closely with, where you're not just promoting their content, but you're promoting like their YouTube channel and stuff. I mean, you're really trying to help them grow and thrive, and as a creator, and support them, you know, so there's enough money on the table that it's worth taking the risk. You know, the risk is not so much a financial risk as a time risk. Like, you're going to spend a year creating something, you'd kind of like to know that, you know, it's going to have the best possible chance of finding some kind of success, right? And there's nothing particularly easy about any of it today. But we did have a meeting of the minds about it where it's like this idea does make sense. You know, I'm in a bit of a unusual space because you know, I've had such a long relationship with this particular distributor. I mean, we've been working together for 15 years. So you guys get the idea. I'm going to save this. Just really old school rubber hose. Where'd my tree go? Oh, yeah. Huh. Did I delete the animation of the tree? I think I did. Oh, you silly goose. Let's see what this is. No big deal. No big deal. Okay, so those are just some thoughts and ideas about what's going on in the animation space. When I decide on an approach, I'll have a solid base for a 2D and 3D or 2.5D projects. I'll have a rig to start from. I would say that can work. I hate to harken back to the days of Blender 2.28, and I'm totally serious here. So we're talking probably around the year 2003 or something. I did just that. I created a rig that was sufficiently generic that it could be with some modifications, like to the length of the appendages and things like that, where I was able to apply it to multiple characters and have it work out quite well. And obviously Blender's a billion times better at that now than it was back then. See, I'm a little bummed out that I deleted my keyframe on the tree. But let me just save this. I feel like starting with some clean paper, as it were. I want to think about this tree thing a little more. Oh yeah, turn that off. So I'm looking at what Amar's saying. I'm sure solid rigs are out there for both. Think of it this way, Amar. I'm going to throw out some questions, and if you want to interact, then please engage relatively promptly, and I'll then understand that you are there and we are having a conversation. Otherwise, it's just me blabbing in response to something you posted, which is fine too. I'm just assuming you're still there. Okay, so think about rigging. Okay, so now you've got a character. In my case, I'm drawing one of these tree characters. Okay, so you got a character, and obviously you could, in Blender, obviously what you could do to do what I'm doing here is you could just add a cylinder in 3D, right? And then you could add, geez, you could add a noise modifier. There's a lot of things you could do to basically, you could do sculpting, whatever you want to do to turn that cylinder into what basically looks like a gnarled old tree. Okay? Now, in the general case, you could probably stick maybe 2 bones, maybe 3 in the tree. And in this case, for what I was illustrating earlier, it'd probably be more like something like this. And then you might have some bones attached to the branches as well, so you could deal with the rubber hose animation. But now the question I'm getting at here for you is, where's all the time go? Like when you're setting up a rig, when you're doing a rig, where does the time go? Okay? And the reason I'm asking is because the things you're talking about in your comments don't really have to do with where all the time goes. They have to do with whether you have relative confidence in the underlying technology and approach. That is important. That is important. You want to have tools that you know can work. But remember, probably at the level of rigging you're talking about, the fact is that you could do it in Hash Animation Master 20 years ago, if not 25 years ago. In fact, you could do it in Blender 25 years ago. Okay? So in other words, when we have a tool that has a capability that we begin to feel like we can wrap our head around it and that maybe it can be relied upon, we get excited. Nothing wrong with that. The problem is that excitement has nothing to do with where all your time's going to go. So my question to you is, just see how you're thinking about it. When you actually get down to rigging your character, where's all your time really going to go? And I'll just wait to see if Amar's still around and see if he answers. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and give this tree a tree beard type, long fingers, not a total rubber hose situation. Okay, looks like Amar might be gone, so thought maybe we were going to have a conversation, but looks like not. So I'll answer the question. Where all your time's going to go, like setting up the bones is pretty easy. Getting the hierarchy right is pretty easy. You know where all the time goes? And there's different ways you can compensate for this or fix it or whatever, but basically where all the time goes is needling into regions like this and dealing with all your vertex, your vertex groups, so that the bones actually manipulate the No. I'm looking at your answer, Amar. I'm telling you, I think it's completely disagreed. You are working backwards. In other words, and now I'm speaking to you directly in order to really give you a tip as someone who you and I have stood by and observed each other for about 5 years, if not more. Okay? I think that your answer is, I so completely understand how your brain is thinking about this, and I'm telling you, I know my brain has thought the same way. I'm telling you, you've made a mistake. You have made a mistake. It is true that once you have the rig from heaven, and assuming you have compliant models, that yes, you can bolt them together, you can fine tune it, like I was talking here about, your vertex groups and making sure that things bend and crease properly, blah, 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 blah. That's where most of the work's going to go with a rigging setup. Okay? If the characters are simpler, obviously it's a little less hassle. It may be a little easier. But you are so thinking about it backwards. I'm telling you, dude, you're thinking about it backwards. What you should do is start with the character and make the character exactly the character you want and love. That you're going to live with this character for a while. Get the character right. Forget rigging. See, I'm telling you, the reason I say you're thinking in reverse is it's like if you're going to, if the rigs weren't sufficient for animation, then make them better. And because the fact is, if you spent a year doing stop motion, you'd get more done one freaking frame at a time than you would spending 2 years looking for what you can feel emotionally is the great rig or the great approach. It isn't just a rig you're looking for. You're looking for a sweet spot of a technology solution that's sufficiently complex and sufficiently simple that it fits your personality, and all of a sudden the light comes on and you're excited about what you can do with it. Well, there's nothing wrong with that in principle, because the things you think you can do with it, you can. The problem is, will you? Well, let's look at it in practice. What's really going to happen? What's really going to happen is that you're going to look at the demands of the challenge, and there are going to be 100 steps. 100 steps from here to your finished animation or story or whatever. There's 100 steps. And I promise you this, the very first step you take, something's going to go wrong. I guarantee it. Not even a question. The very first thing you do is going to be the exception to the rule. It's going to turn out that every single step you take just happens to be the one that doesn't quite work according to the framework you had in your head that you got excited about. And I'm going to tell you why. And what I'm about to say right now is extremely important. I urge you to pay attention. It's based on a lifetime of self-analysis to really look at our emotions and what drives us and why we do what we do and blah, blah, blah. I'm telling you. Okay? First of all, if you really want to do the rigging thing and you're serious about that, that's fine. Roll your own rig. Because if you roll your own rig, first of all, you're going to know it inside and out. Number one. Number two, you're going to only create what you need to create to do what you want to do. Look, I mean, what is a rig? Let's just look at it. I'm going to change materials here and show you something, because this is pretty important to understand here. So I'm going to make this real bright and red so that I can draw over it and show you a few things. Okay. First of all, what is rigging? Rigging is one thing. Well, it's not one thing, but here's what rigging is. Number one, you take your 3D model, you're going to define a vertex group for this, you're going to define a vertex group for this, and on it goes. Fingers, trunk, whatever. You're going to define vertex groups because you want to do the rigging thing. Fine. So this is where I said all the time is going to go. A lot of the time is going to go to these regions because you have to strike a balance either with weight painting or some other methodology so that you can have nice action on these joints. So you're going to give a lot of time just to this, and that's fine, okay? But what is it really? You have a bone, it has a region of influence. Dude, that's it. That's all there is. There is nothing more. And if you want to make it more, what people get excited about is, before we had, drivers and modifiers and constraints, we had to be a little more creative mentally to, come up with something that worked the way we want it to work. So what would be elegant? Well, what would be elegant is over here you'd have a model of a sphere in your scene, for example. Like this is just like an empty that's a sphere. And you've mapped the rotations of the sphere, each of the three axes, to this bone. But that's just a driver. There's nothing to that. That takes 5 minutes to set up. You set up a driver, end of story. You rotate this rotates too. Oh my God, it seems like magic. Well, no, it's not magic. It's just math. It's just a relationship between the rotation of this and the rotation of this. Beyond that, you can make it more elegant by having maybe one controller down here. And you're all excited because it's on the screen. When I drag on this, something happens over here. And this controller actually takes this and all of this and all of this, and kind of wraps it so that you have the broader macro effect that you can just tweak this. That's it. That's it. There is nothing more. There's nothing more here. So, how much time does that take to find? Right? But that's not what we do. Emotionally, that is not what we do. We don't look at things pragmatically and rationally. I'm not shaming you for that, because I'm the same way. I wouldn't even know this if I hadn't seen it in myself and, was increasingly horrified at my own behavior, because I realized my behavior results in me doing things that basically gratify my ego very briefly. Like the extreme of ego would be this. I create a YouTube channel where I'm doing the animation stuff I'm doing, and everybody who ever comes to my channel is like an 8-year-old, okay? And so I find it's like really easy to impress the 8-year-olds. But the problem is the real world looks at me and just laughs. Like, come on, dude, get your shit together. Yeah, but see now, Amar, what you're doing is you're using a let me tell you what you just did was you're stating something in the chat that is obviously indisputable. Well, of course it is math-based, duh. And of course it can get complex based on how you want to perform. That's a broad brush statement that can be applied to literally anything. And it's like, I get it, because it's like you're maybe trying to save face here a little bit, but you don't need to save face because nobody's insulting you. I'm talking about the clinical hard cold facts of the matter. And the hard fact of the matter is that the real world is not impressed with me. The real world is never impressed with me. It only either likes what I produce or it doesn't. It either sells or it doesn't. It either grabs and gets views or it doesn't. That's it. There is nothing more. And no amount, and I understand the mindset. Look, I mean, you got to realize in 2002, I was having a really intense argument with myself. Gosh, should I do this bigger project that I wanted to do? Should I do it in Hash, or should I do it in Blender? Or should I do it in Hash, or should I do it in Blender? Or should I go ahead and spend $10,000 and get Maya? As if the tool was going to solve the problem in any way, shape, or form. And what you find out is not at all. Zero. You have exactly the same dynamic today. It's why we wait for the next version of Blender to come out, or we wait for the next plugin or add-on. The thing that's going to make it easier, that all of a sudden, finally I can create what I've had this vision for. And this is the part where it gets a little hard, because I'm saying, oh, no, bullshit. If you were serious, what you do is you just do the storyboards. You do each step of the process in such a way that it's more or less complete, up to the point that your capabilities and your knowledge, you can't do the next step, right? It's like the Peter principle existing in an individual person. It's perfectly natural. Of course, that's what happens. And then what is the solution after that? Is it to spend another 2 years looking for the tool that's going to make it easy? No. The solution for you, if you're serious about rigging, I say this emphatically, and anybody that's listening right now, feel free to disagree with me, because I don't think you're gonna. If you want to do the 2D, 3D rigging thing, then just do it. Make your own rig. Don't use Rigify. Rigify is for the person that's already created 50 rigs, and they know the system inside and out, and they know the shortcomings of their own rigs, and then they realize that the next iteration of their idea that would get it to the complexity and capability level that would work for them, that's when they find out, oh, somebody already did that, and it's called Rigify. Rigify is not for newbies, man. Rigify is for people that know what the hell they're doing. When Nathan created that, just look at Big Buck Bunny. And by the way, if you want to know, when was Big Buck Bunny done? Because Rigify basically flowed out of that. We're talking about, what was it, like 2005 or something? You're talking about Blender 2.5 or 8. It's way back. So what I'm saying is the tools are already there. They've been there for years. Okay? But in the artist space, the artists, I hate to say it this way, But like I said, ego for me was a big driver. It's why I live stream less than I do, is because ego is quite a nefarious thing. What ego does is it gets you to satisfice with a slap on the back from your peer or the person that you think's impressed with you, and you take that and you glory in it in lieu of actually creating and finishing something impressive that actually competes in the marketplace. Okay? When we spend years looking for the next tool or the next approach or the next add-on, it's because basically we're too lazy to just learn how to do it. It's the people that have done the work. So if let's just, for the sake of argument, to keep it simple, let's assume that I'm right. Okay, just for fun. Yeah, I may not be. There may be something I'm missing here. I always want to give that caveat. But basically, if it's a discipline problem, okay, let's step sideways from why that would be a problem. Well, why is it a discipline problem to the animator, creator person? Well, it's a discipline problem because what you do is you create something like I've done here, where you create these drawings, and then you get to a certain point where you're really invested in it. Okay, you've invested quite a lot in it, and then you realize to your horror that it's not even close to as good as you want it to be, and probably it's never going to be. Like, you're going to have to redo it or redo a lot of it, and this is very demoralizing. And so as creators, we're afraid of that. Okay, we're really afraid of that. We don't want to spend a bunch of time, and especially publicly, right? Come on here in front of all my friends and all my peers and everybody who knows me and tell them what I'm going to do, and then I either don't finish it, and if that happens too many times, then you simply become known as the person who never finishes anything. So that's the thing you have to struggle with, Amar, is you're the guy who's reasonably talented, but doesn't seem to finish things. And so what's the solution? Well, the solution is to simply finish one thing. It's the same problem where we've had the same conversation now for literally years. And there's something about your emotions that are stopping you. So if you want to be courageous, this is what you would have to do. Okay? Because you're pretty honest in your chat here. Like, when you're talking about what your weaknesses are, you need to be honored and respected by this community for the fact that you have the courage to admit what you struggle with. Right? But it would be very useful for you to identify what's really, really, really going on in your emotions. Because normally, if somebody says, yeah, I really should be doing this. Yeah, I should probably do that. When a person says they should, what they mean is they're not doing it, and the dirty little secret is that they don't actually really want to. Because if you want to, so as artists we have this conflict, and the conflict is between the thing we want to see appear on the screen and the labor that's required to actually realize that vision. So there's a middle ground. There's middle ground shortcuts, like, you do something that's simpler, or you do something that's easier, right? But I think I'll just wrap this up to say there is no shortcut. There will never be a shortcut. There's never been a shortcut. And if a person is saying that they want to do this or that or the other, but they're not actually doing it, there's basically no exceptions at all. As far as I'm concerned, they're lying to themselves. They don't want to do it. They don't want to admit to their peer group that they don't want to do it. Like, they don't want to come out of the closet, so to say, and finally go, actually, I don't really love this animation thing that much. Okay, so now this is a very honest comment. I feel like I'm not good enough for the time I've been around it. Okay. Okay, think of it this way, Amar. Total newbie, total expert. Okay? The progression goes like this. Okay? There's a threshold that's hard to quantify where all of a sudden it begins to take on a life of its own and accelerate. Okay, so let's say you get to this level and there's some mountain you have to climb. And the mountain we're going to talk about, because it's been on topic here for a bit, is rigging. So you're saying you want to do this, and of course, if I'm going to be really critical, I'm going to go, well, okay, where's your character sketch and where's the 3D model? Show us the 3D model, because otherwise you're just talking trash about doing a 2D, 3D thing, because how can you rig something if you don't have something to rig? You know? Okay. So you have to have a model first. So if I was your employer and I'm paying you to be here and you know, and talking about it here is part of what I'm paying you for. But okay. So I'm paying you, let's say, and I'm going, well, wait a minute, Amar, why would you even begin to think about talking about rigging, which is this step in your level of expertise, when you don't even have a model, which is back here in this step of your expertise? Okay, so the creative challenge, or the learning challenge, is you go, oh, well, I guess I need to create a model. Well, you don't want to come to your peer group and go, you know, look at this model I created that looks like it was created by an 8-year-old, okay? I'm not saying that's what you're going to do or that you have done. What I'm saying is, psychologically and emotionally, this is what you would not want to have happen. You can talk intelligently about all the reasons why this particular approach to rigging is good or bad. And amongst your peers, we're going to respect your opinion while we wait to see you do something with it, okay? The problem is, the whole reason you're talking about this is because you haven't yet done this. And you don't want to even show the model that you're going to be rigging because you're embarrassed by it. And all I'm saying is, okay, if I'm your friend, if I'm your boss, if I'm your dad, I would say, well, Amar, it sounds like what you need to do is go back and get the damn model right. Get the model to the point where it delights you. You love to look at it. You love to spin it around in 3D. It's absolutely exquisite. And then you argue with me. You go, well, no, you can't do that, because if I'm going to create the model, I have to create it in this basic pose, right, to set it up for rigging. Bullshit. That is not true. That's what you do when, you know, if you want to do that, you can, but it is not a rule, right? Create the model first. So then you go, well, no, I can't create the model because I need to use certain modeling tools that I actually haven't worked with enough, and I'm not really competent to use, actually. So I can talk about it because I've watched plenty of YouTube videos, but I don't really know how to actually use the, you know, this modifier and that modifier, or God forbid, geometry nodes, right? What I want to tell you, Amar, is that we love you, man. You're not fooling anybody. You're never fooling anybody. Everybody knows where you're at, and there's nothing wrong with it. Because this progression here, it doesn't matter how old you are, man. In fact, think about the irony of this. If you were 17 years old and you were at, let's say you've actually achieved to about this level here. If you were 17 years old, we'd all be impressed because you're so young. If you started at age 78, and by the time you're 82, you were crossing this threshold, we would be impressed with that because you're too old, because you're so old. Wow, it's impressive that somebody just started at 78 years old and look what they did, like Grandma Moses kind of thing. Or look at this person. This is just a kid, but look at the talent they're showing. And what is the common thread between these two people? Nothing. They just did it. They just started, and when they ran into a problem, they just kept going, and they refused to quit until they were satisfied with it. So how does that make them different from you? Two things. Number one, either there are barriers at which, because the best thing that you've said in the chat is this confession that it has to do with, you don't want to, you feel bad because you have waited too long and it's taken a long time for you to get to a certain level. Okay, so you're embarrassed by that. Dude, we all get it. Just go do it. If you don't go do it, if you know that your secret's out, think about this. Just ponder this for a minute. If you know that all of your secrets are out, everybody knows what really goes on in your head. Everybody knows your emotions. You're not fooling anybody. Okay. If that were true, don't you have to look at yourself and go, wait a minute, you know, my friends aren't shaming me really. I mean, they're giving me their best advice, but basically everything in my psycho-emotional barriers that I've set up to protect myself from the fact that people will see me for such a slut that I am. And I say it that way because I feel those things. I know how that feels. Okay? You realize, oh, nobody's either shaming me, and nobody's really slapping me on the back either, by the way. They did that a few years ago when I was new to the crowd and they just were getting to know me. And then it was every little thing I said I was going to do. It's like, yeah, man, that'll be cool. Right? But they've learned that doesn't work with me because I talk about it and then I disappear for a while and then I reappear and talk about something new. And what happens is over time, those attaboys just start to go down, down, down. Dude, this is normal. Okay? The emotional pathway is normal. The response of the crowd is normal. Because everybody's just waiting for the person that actually gets something done. Because that requires discipline and it requires a certain amount of pain. Because you're going to have things go wrong and then you got to keep trying and trying and trying. And why would you do that? Think about it. If your secret is out, what is the only thing that's going to keep you from trying and trying and trying? Saying, here's where I'm at today. I look in the mirror. This is what I've got to work with. Go. What's going to stop you? I know exactly what's going to stop you. Now, I'm going to give you about 1 minute to pop something in the chat. You tell me, if you know you're not fooling everybody, if you know the tools are adequate to the task at hand, because other people are doing it, and you don't do it, there's really only one reason why you wouldn't be doing it. So, admit it. We're going to let that 1 minute go by. And by the way, I'm going to hit I and insert a blank keyframe. I'm just going to doodle. What's the reason? What is the reason why you wouldn't do it? If there's no, you're not erecting and holding up any defenses on social media? I don't know. What does I quit mean? You quit? Are you saying you quit back then, or you're saying you're quitting now, or no, Amar, no. That's not the reason. You quit for a reason. What I'm saying is, okay, if you quit, what was the reason why you quit? It's one of the hardest things to face as a creator, when you're yeah, but you push through. But see, that's not accurate. Okay, I'm trying to keep this clinical and accurate, rational. There are many things you've pushed through, Amar. There are many bits of art that you've created. There are many 3D models. You've done many, many really interesting and impressive things. Lots of them. Maybe you needed to hear that more. I'm not sure. But that's not, if you know, let me put it this way. If you know that you as a person are fully known and you're still loved by your peer group, we're still welcome here, you know. What's Amar up to? It's cool. It's all cool. Okay? So if you're not pushing through, why aren't you pushing through? I was with you on Hash. I hated it. Once they got past, I think, 2000, I abandoned it. I went to Blender, is what I did. Okay, so I'm going to give you the answer, because if you knew the answer, you would have stated it by now. The answer is you're not doing it because you don't actually want to. The hardest thing, think of it this way, and anybody else who's listening, I don't know if Darren's still around, but if you want to, you know, weigh in on this opinion, we're all kind of similar age guys here, you know, I think. It is difficult to actually let me put it this way. Back in the 80s, when I was starting to produce radio jingles and get involved with music, there was a tool called the synclavier. And the synclavier was $100,000. It was an early digital sampler, okay? The problem was I couldn't have access to a synclavier, okay? So the synclavier had what I call mystique. It was like, oh my God, the things I could do if I just had a synclavier. Well, what I actually did have by, 1992, I think it was an ASR 10. from Ensoniq, which was affordable. And in point of fact, the irony is, looking back on it 20, 30 years later, this was actually much, not a little bit, a lot better than a Synclavier. More reliable, more capable, blah, blah, blah. There were things the Synclavier did that this couldn't do, but basically, if you're looking at digital samplers, this was awesome. This was 24-bit, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so what I'm saying is that the mystique of it lasted way, way, way longer in my life than it should have. And it's really hard to look in the mirror after investing emotion into an idea for 20 or 30 years and realize that that it was all just kind of an emotional crutch. It was basically just the mystique. It never was about the Synclavier. It was about the mystique about the Synclavier, most of which was hogwash. For AMR, though, I would say I think what you just said, though, what you just said is that you're good on a team. So and that's worth thinking about for anybody else who's here. I mean, it's worth thinking about with AMR, you know. I'm the same way. I've done almost no 24 frame per second animation forever. And yet last year when a situation came across my desk where a client needed 24 frame per second animation, I just immediately rose to the challenge. I haven't written too many songs lately, but when I produced the movie Healed by Grace, I needed a half a dozen pretty good pop country type songs at that time. And I just did it within a couple weeks. I wrote 6 songs, and they're good. I mean, go watch the freaking movie. The songs are good. They're solid songs. But I didn't do it until I had a reason to do it. You know, and so the encouraging thing for you, Amar, is that the talent that you have, that you probably had when you were 16 years old, you still have. It's not going to go away. Okay? The basic desires and talents stay with us. Now, if you dive into the work process of animation or whatever for a while, you will get better. But I'm the same as you in this way. I have to tell you, if I draw a lot, my drawing gets better. However, if I don't draw on a regular basis, I basically revert back to pretty much where I was when I was 17. I'm not that much better. I'm better, but I'm not that much better. The basic core guy is still the same guy he always was. So that's discouraging in the sense that we don't actually ever really get that much better, but it's encouraging in the sense that, well, you know, there's kind of a use it or lose it thing, but basically you're good, man. So you can start today. Yeah, I understand the psychology of that. I understand when there's somebody paying you, for example, or if it's a group thing where you know that people are looking to you enthusiastically to deliver something, that it's easier to pull it out of yourself. I get that. So it could be that is, in fact, your biggest challenge, is that when you're not part of a group or when you're not, got somebody else cracking the whip, so to say, that you have a hard time motivating yourself. And I don't think there's a solution for that other than practice. The good news is, I think I'm going to wrap up the live stream today with this. I don't think that we cannot overstate the power of habit. When you ask yourself, like if you ask yourself, well, I do something but I don't finish it. Well, why do I do that? I know the real reason. The reason is you don't do it because you haven't done it in the past. You're just repeating the same thing you've done before. That's your comfort zone. Your comfort zone is to repeat the known. And for you, so whatever your habit is, so we live by habit. You know, as my saying is that you are what you do, especially in the opinion of everybody else. You are what you do. But then the question becomes, well, why do I do what I do? And the best reason, the most functional reason that seems to cut across all situations is you do what you did. It's whatever you're used to. Okay? So if I draw a bunch of scribbles like this and I say, okay, find the dot, maybe you'll find it because it's right there. Maybe you'll find it. But if I have a blank whiteboard and I say find the dot, it's easy. Do you see that? Okay, your mind as an adult is like this. You have tons of experiences and memories and emotions and all this stuff. When you're a child or when you're a young person, younger, you were more like this. And so the early things you learned, even if they were wrong, even if they were trauma, even if they were bad instructions, you were told how to use a software tool, but the person who told you didn't know what they were even talking about, but you didn't know that they didn't know what they were talking about, right? So then what happens is whatever you learn first has no ideas to compete with in your mind, do they? There's nothing for that idea or that instruction or that trauma. There's nothing for it to compete with. So your body accepts this as both valid, not necessarily true, but valid. And then the crappy thing about it is that black dot becomes the basis on which every other experience you have downstream gets compared. And we all have this dynamic. It is literally a recursive feedback loop where we observe things with our perceptions, and then we look into our memory bank and we compare our lived experience to stuff that's happened to us in the past. And so what's happening right now evokes an emotion, and the emotion comes from a memory. And then what we do is that becomes scaffolding on which we hang a narrative about what the current lived experience means to us. And then if it's consistent with what we think we knew in the past, then we tend to reinforce this, and this becomes stronger. This is why critical thinking is so important, and it's why we should teach kids in a way that's completely different than the way we typically do, is because you want to have the tools in your toolkit to assess whether the information coming your way is in fact going to help you or harm you. And so whatever you're struggling with today is in fact mainly just your habit. It's just what you've been doing, and you can change that literally right now. And the best way to do it, in my opinion, is going to be to apply the 11-minute rule. The 11-minute rule is quite liberating. Okay, and I'm going to end with this today. How does the 11-minute rule help you? Well, it helps you in two different ways. On the one hand, something that you really, really, really hate to do, you say to yourself, you know what? I can suffer through anything for 11 minutes, right? So it gives you a simple framework. You say, I'm not going to accomplish anything with animation today. I'm not going to accomplish a drawing. I'm not going to accomplish anything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do that one thing for 11 minutes. Why? Why? Because after 11 minutes, I can look at it and I can choose to bring rationality and a clinical assessment to the table and just have a conversation with myself and say, okay, how did I do? What did I produce? Do I like it? Do I not like it? Was it actually fun? If you apply the 11-minute rule to modeling in Blender and you get through the 11 minutes and you go, I kind of hated doing that, that is extremely helpful to you. It's really sad if you've already invested 25 years in being a Blender guy, but actually it's very good, because what does it mean? It means you're finally freaking telling the truth. You're finally telling yourself the truth. The truth is you don't want to do it, and that's okay. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to be bummed out because you don't want to do it. If you want to do it, and if you don't, don't. The other side of the 11-minute rule is, if it is something you like, now this is more important for Amar, and for me, this is important. The flip side of the 11-minute rule is stop after 11 minutes. This is very, very important. Very important. Probably more important than saying, yes, I can suffer through doing this discipline for 11 minutes. This is even more important. Suppose you dive into this, and as I like to say, dive into it to get into it. You want to get into it? Dive into it. Give it a chance. Okay, here's what's going to happen. If this activity resonates with you, you're going to get excited. You're going to get going. It's going to be fun. And then what's going to happen is you're going to have an emotional experience associated with that 11-minute session. And then what's going to happen is this is going to fuck you up. Let me tell you how. because you're going to want to reproduce that emotional experience. And what you're going to come away with is not the clinical assessment of what did I do, how did I do, what did I like about it, what do I not like about it, what can we do improve next time when we do the next 11-minute session. That's why the 11-minute rule not only says you can suffer through anything, so just give it only 11 minutes, but it also means quit after 11 minutes. Stop. Don't get addicted to this. Because otherwise you will actually, so this is modeling in the example I used. Well, here's what will happen. The danger is this. What you're going to remember is the emotion of it, because this time when you did it, it happened to go well. Okay? You with me? And because it went well, you got excited. And the problem is you don't want to be a person that's living and making decisions all the time based on whether you feel like this or feel like this. Because you have become probably, and I've done the same, is you've become a person that's absolutely bandied to and fro by your emotions all the time. And it's the thing about you that you're most ashamed of, because you go, my God, I'm 50 some years old and I'm still this guy, like a little kid. And I'm telling you, yes, you are. And so am I. So am I. That's why I have little rules like this. I am not a particularly disciplined guy. I am not a particularly talented guy. And I'm still figuring it out. So the 11-minute rule says, damn it, give it 11 minutes. But it also says stop after 11 minutes. Get yourself out of the creative mode, because now it's time to get away and you want to assess. Just assess it. Take the 11-minute result and step back as if someone else had done it and make a clinical assessment about what's good, what's bad, what went well, what felt good, what didn't feel good, and decide. Decide for yourself. You decide. It's not about what some idiot on a forum or in a video said is appropriate for you or that you need to do. Like I said up there about the modeling, about setting up a rig in a certain pose. That's all nonsense. Own it. The point here is you're trying to learn, you're trying to teach yourself, and I'm telling you guys, I'm telling you, this is the authentic Dave talking right now, because I've had to learn this. Just the last couple of years that I've been doing less live streaming, this is what I've been doing, is unpacking this crap in myself. This really isn't about Amar. This is really more about me. And what happens is when you do that clinical assessment, you start to uncover and notice these dynamics where you realize that your momentary emotional state has been controlling you way more than is appropriate. It's exactly what you would want to teach a young child, is emotional regulation. And right now in America, probably other places too, but we're in a culture where we are not being taught and or encouraged to emotionally regulate in a mature way. We're not. And that's what social media is all about. You know, you look at fucking influencers and it's like as if they just basically, you know, took a dump and all of a sudden had a Lamborghini. It is so ridiculous. It is so ridiculous that there's no words for how stupid it is. And yet people believe it basically because the experience of consuming that crap is in fact entertaining. And what does it do? It allows you to forestall and put off actually growing the fuck up. Having discipline. Being self-motivated. You don't have to be self-motivated forever. We're not talking about your whole life here. We're talking about 11 minutes. And if you do it, feel free to congratulate yourself. It's actually, let me put it this way, and I'll end on this point. Would anybody ever have to even say this if it wasn't actually the dirty little secret that all the adults in the room are hiding from themselves and each other, is that actually we all struggle with it. We all suck at discipline. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to say things like this and have people go, wow, you know, I never thought of it that way. The reason you never thought of it that way is because you have given yourself so many crutches, and usually those crutches are because of the ego thing. You know, you go somewhere, you go anywhere you can go where it's a sufficiently small pond where you look like a big fish for half a second. And that's been the 3D space ever since I've been involved with it. So we're talking over 30 years. It's just the way it is, guys. You know, the people that I respect and admire, when I talk about Stephen J. Candler or talk about Mike Post, these people are not the most talented guys in the room when they were, you know, producing or creating or whatever. You know, you look at Charles Schultz with Peanuts or any comic strip. The discipline and the rigor of, you know, you sit down every day and you've got to create something. You have to come up with something. Now, maybe you batch it and do a week's worth in advance. That's fine. You know, but that's the creative process. But just the people I respect the most are the people who are just steady. You know, they just do it. And they understand, you know, and this is a good one for you, Amar. They understand that if I'm going to produce 300 circles, you know what? Some of them are going to suck. Some of them aren't going to be round. That's okay. That's okay. They don't all have to be perfect. And then if you have a tool in your toolkit like Blender that allows you, I don't know the hotkey anymore, but that allows you to take one that's less than optimal and turn it into a circle, great. Cool. Use the tool. Use the tool. It's a balance. It's a balance between your talent, your skill, and your tools. Right? But okay, that's it for today. I need to get out of here. Hope it helps. You know, I wanna see what I want to see the most with you, Amar, is you feeling, which you can't really show very well, but I want you to feel like you have full ownership of your own lived experience. You understand that with the thoughts you're choosing to think, you're literally creating your own lived experience. You can practice this. It's a little more micro rule than the 12 or the 11-minute rule. The micro rule would be seek thought action congruence. TAC. That means that at all times you do two things. Number one, whatever you're thinking about right now is only what you're doing. Thought action congruence. You're not allowed to think about anything except what you're doing right now. If you discipline yourself to do that for 1 minute, what you will discover is that this is the secret to the flow state, what people call the flow state or the zone. All the flow state is, it's not something you have to get to. It's something that is this. Flow state is when what you're thinking about and what you're doing are the same thing at the same time. That's when you're focused. And that's when the pleasure of anything you're doing, whether you're cooking in the kitchen or working on animation, doesn't matter. When what you do and what you are thinking about are matched, you have no dissonance, right? There's no dissonance in your mind. And that's when you go, oh my God, you know, I've only been animating here or working on this for 3 minutes and I'm already starting to have fun. Who knew? Well, yeah, it's because you're not judging yourself. You're not sitting here and beating yourself up and shaming yourself with some absolutely nonsensical narrative about what you think is expected of you. It's nonsense. And it's partly why it's horrifying and hard to face, is because when you look in the mirror and face the truth, you realize that nothing's expected of you. But that also means that nobody really cares much. Yeah, I mean, they kind of care a little, but not much. They don't care. That's actually a really liberating thought. So go for thought action congruence so that you find the flow state, and then see if you can achieve that for 11 minutes. And then now you're making it quantifiable, because you're going to look at it and go, okay, what did I actually do? And the most important question you're going to ask yourself is, did I enjoy it? Would I want to repeat the experience? If the answer is, if you're having a hard time saying yes, it's because the answer is no. And there's nothing wrong with that, because what it means is it may be time for you to cross this particular activity off your list, invest yourself in other things. You make no excuses. You don't have to make any excuses. There's nobody you need to apologize to. And just go find the thing that does make you thrilled in the lived experience of it. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks for hanging. You guys have been great, and I'll see you next time.